Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
Now let's talk about the classroom activities in communicative language teaching. Since the development and increasing popularity of communicative language teaching, the language instructor and materials designers are in favor of the activities based on the communicative methodology. This venture is still continue till present day. Jagdish Richard in his text Communicative Language Teaching discussed two types of activities on the basis of learning outcomes. They are accuracy based activities and fluency based activities. The brief understanding of both these activities are as presented in the following table. Activity focusing on fluency reflect natural use of language, focus on achieving communications required, meaningful use of language require the use of communication strategies, procedures language that may not be predictable seek to link a language used to context. Activities focusing on accuracy reflect classroom use of language, focus on the information of correct example of a language, practice language out of context, practice small samples of a language, do not require meaningful communication choices of a language, is control. Let's talk about the fluency activities. A group of students of a mixed language ability carry out a role play in which they have to adopt specified roles and personalities provided for them on the cue cards. These roles involves the drivers, witness and the police at a collisions between two cars. The language is entirely improvised by the students, though they are heavily constrained by the specified situations and the characters. The teachers and the students act out a dialogue in which a customer returns a faulty object she has purchased to department store. The clerk asks what the problem is and promises to get a refund for the customers or to replace the item. And groups of students now try to recreate the dialogues using the language items of their choices. They are asked to recreate what happened, preserving the meaning but not necessarily the exact language. They later act out the dialogues in the front of the class. Accuracy activities. Students are practicing dialogues. The dialogues contain examples of failing intonations in WH questions. The class is organized in the group of three, two students practicing the dialogue and the third playing the role of a monitor. The monitor checks that the other are using correct intonations or not, pattern and correct them where they necessary. The students rotate their roles between those reading the dialogue and those monitoring. The teacher moves around listening to the groups and correcting their language where necessary. Students in group of 3 or 4 complete an exercises on the grammatical item such as choosing between the past tense and the present perfect, an item which the teacher has previously presented and practiced as a whole class activity. Together students decide which grammatical forms is correct and they complete the exercise. Group takes turns reading out their answers. Here in both above activities, teacher's role become extremely prominent and that of a moderator. Let's talk about the procedures. After all, the contributions by the language experts in the form of methodology, principles and the materials. The procedures to be followed in the classroom ways yet to be discussed. In this regards, Finotero and Brumfitt have presented an outline for teaching the functions, making suggestions according to them. CLT procedure is not a revolutionary but evolutionary by the nature. Presentations of a brief dialogue or several mini dialogues preceded by motivations relating to the dialogue situations to the learners, probable community experiences and discussions of functions and the situations. People, roles, settings, topic and the informality for or formality of a language which the function and situations demand. At the beginning levels, of course, where all the learners understand the same native language, the motivation can well be given the native. The second one is oral practice of each utterance of the dialogue segment to be presented that day. Entires like classroom repetitions, half class, groups, individuals, etc. Generally preceded by your model of mini dialogues are used. Engage in similar practices. Questions and answered based on the dialogues, topics and the situations itself. Inverted with like WH or O questions. Questions and answers related to the student's personal experiences but centered around the dialogue's theme. Study one of a basic communicative expressions in the dialogue or one of the structure which exemplify the functions. You will wish to give the several additional examples of the communicative uses of the expressions or the structures with the familiar vocabulary in unambiguous utterances or the mini dialogues. You can use pictures, simple real objects or the dramatizations to clarify the meaning of expressions or structures. Learners' discovery of generalizations or rules underlying the functional expressions or structures. This should include at least 4 points. Its oral and written forms, the elements of which it is composed, example how about, or you can use the verb plus ing, etc. In these positions, utterance is formally or informally in the utterances, and in the cases of structure it is the grammatical functions and the meaning. Oral recognitions, interpretative activities, 2 or 5 depending on the learning levels, the language knowledge of the students and relate them the factors. Oral productions, activities proceeding from the guide to fear the communications activities as well. Copying of the dialogues or mini dialogues or modules if they are not in the class text. Sampling of the written homework assignments if given. Evaluations of learning, and it should be orally. Example, how would you ask your friend to so and so, and how would you ask me to? Give it the blanks, give them a space, you can get it. I would like to conclude with that it is quite reasonable to say that today communicative language teaching is in its classic form, which has encompassed almost all the range of courses, books or the materials available and reserved place in the classroom across the globe. It has also influenced other coexisting methods and approaches in general and the language teaching techniques in particular. I hope that this module will help you to enhance students' capability in classroom with this realia as well as this practical approach. I hope you have a great time in classroom.
I would like to thank Maulik for an interesting deliberation and discussion on CLT. Maulik has talked about the area which many of us may not be able to touch due to many challenges. The challenges, if we look at of a teacher, then the biggest challenge of today's classroom is the classrooms are very large. So Maulik, I would like to know it from you that is this useful for the large classrooms as well?
Definitely sir, it is, because here the various activities which are already designed in pair work or the group work. Okay. So you can distribute that group or the pair works in a proper manner. So it is not a big deal to deal with a large amount of the students or the larger classroom. Second thing is that here the work of a teacher or the work of a facilitator only to guide them, to facilitate them. So you have to take around that area, you have to just guide the students and provide the informations, because after all our intention is to
use them various
language functions.
Very true. But I guess the instructions, that part the teacher has to take, and teacher has to exhibit also. He has to give examples that how to do this activity or like that. What kind of activity generally are taken? Can you give one example of
Yeah,
activity?
we can design, suppose a role play is there, functional activities are there in the communicative language teaching, because it is basically designed for the competence.
Yes.
And the competence, when we talk about
So
the
you
competence,
can look at various functions of language.
Yes, sir, we
and
can take.
accordingly you can have various tasks.
Yes, sir.
Say for example, you said role play.
Yes.
So role play also has a lot of functions of language covered.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so
sir.
you give them a theme and then you give them a role, and
Yeah.
then they play the role. So when they play the role, there are various functions which are covered. They will talk to students, so the speaking will come there. Their students will listen to it, so listening will also be a practice.
Yes,
and there is observation and there is acting. Lot of interesting things are involved in that.
Yep.
We in the beginning we talked about various functions of teachers, and at the time we said that the teacher has to be performer.
Yes, sir.
So he has to perform different roles. So here not only his roles, but he can ask students to play various roles.
Yes,
Friend, the biggest thing which students like is challenge. You would have seen many viral videos on the names of some dances. I don't want to name any dances, but there are dances where you open the door of a car and then somebody is dancing and walking with you. There are many hazards which happens. There are challenges where you have to hurt yourself to reach to various levels of the game. If you want to go to the upper level of the game, you have to hurt yourself, and the level may reach where you have to go for suicide also. So see, just a challenging a student may provoke him to go for even suicide. Then if you challenge a student in your classroom to play various roles, to go for different tasks, to perform various activities related to the task through which you can develop his skills, then really he or she will like it, and students will try to perform best to the challenges which you are giving them. So one of the very prominent thing, if we want to make it interesting, so we can make our teaching and learning very interesting through this one of the scope where we can give them lot of challenges, and the challenges should be such which they can do, which they may like, and they can perform. You can start with very simple kind of challenges, and then you can scaffold it, and then you can reach to higher level of complex kind of challenges. But I think challenging your student will also make them learn in a better way. So I would like to thank Maulik Barot once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.